Morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm very tired. I had a very busy weekend. We had an incredible conference. Real Women's Conference was out of this world. The Lord just knocked it out of the park. It was just amazing, wasn't it?
It's very good. I was there.
So many people just touched. You have shaving foam in your ear.
It's all right.
Yeah, lots of people really touched and great turnout. It's really amazing.
Great
so if you
turnout.
weren't there, you need to be there next year. There's
Next
a big
year.
announcement. There'll be one next year. So
And
come
you
on.
know,
And so come on.
there's a real men's conference coming.
Well, I wasn't really going to announce that just yet, but
Oh,
there
yeah?
you go. You got it hot off the press. There's Real Men's Conference coming in February, hopefully. We'll see.
Hopefully, yeah.
We don't know. We'll see. We're working on it. We're looking at if it's feasible.
Yeah, well.
So, hope you all had an amazing weekend. Yeah, we had a good one. Busy.
So okay,
so
throw up the old verse there.
Throw up the old verse.
Throw it up.
Let's see. I bet you that there's a message there. It's Jonathan. Good morning.
He's always
How are
faithful.
you, Jonathan? It went amazing, John. We had an amazing time. It was just really the Lord, just amazing to see, like when the Lord just steps in like that, isn't it? When you're just there in the right place, just when we go to meet with God, that's the word God gave me before the conference. When we go to meet with God, He's preparing to meet with us as well, which is really special. So we had and that's really what happened. So this morning we're going to talk from 1 Samuel 17:45, story we all know. We definitely, everybody knows this story, don't they?
Yeah.
So David said to the Philistines, so we know this is Goliath and David and yada, yada, yada. We know he's going to win in the end. We're lucky that we have hindsight. We have the end of the book. But poor David was running straight at a giant, didn't know what the outcome would be. And he says, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Now, I did pull up another version, but to be honest, it says what it says, and this was the Amplified, and it says, you come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have taunted. So it's pretty much the same.
Right, I want to talk to you probably from a different position on this one today. See what you think. First thing I want to say is David never called him a giant.
Okay, very good.
That's the first thing I want to say. There's no mention of a giant in there. There's mention of his size and all that, but David never mentions the fact that he was a big guy.
Okay.
David mentions the fact of who he was. He was a Philistine.
Yeah, Philistine.
So David.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Right. So what I want to bring home to talk to you today is this. David confronted the problem.
Yeah.
David wasn't going to go any further until he confronted the issue. And so often when we're faced with situations and circumstances and problems, we have this tendency, just like the army of Israel, to wait there, keep waiting and hoping it's going to disappear.
Yeah.
Where David comes into this situation, and rather than waiting for the problem to disappear, he says, basically in a nutshell, let's deal with the problem.
Okay.
Let's sort the problem out here.
Well, I think we're talking about him identifying it, aren't we?
Well, he identifies the problem, but he also deals with the problem.
Yeah.
So a lot of people can identify with the problem, but often they don't deal with it.
Yeah.
They're hoping that the problem will disappear or fade away.
He identifies it and he confronts it.
Yes, confronts.
So he confronts him and identifies him as a Philistine. I love the bit when he first arrives and he says the whole army standing there waiting for Goliath to abuse them, like, and verbally attack them. And David's like, who is this uncircumcised Philistine who comes against the... Like, he's like, what are you all doing? In other words, like, look at this guy. Who does he think he is? And I think it's really important. Like, he comes against him. He fully identifies what he's dealing with. You know, and I think it's important. I think that's a really good point, actually. I've never thought of that he doesn't call him a giant.
Never.
So he calls him, you know, he's a warrior. You're coming with me, a sword and spirit. You're coming... But he really fully identifies who he's coming against and what he's got in his hand.
Do you know why he didn't call him a giant?
Why?
Because his perspective was different to everyone else standing there.
Because he was coming from God's perspective.
And he was coming from the one who was a giant.
Exactly.
Who was bigger than that problem. So when David steps into that valley, he knows actually who's the big person at play here.
Yeah.
Not even himself. Because David says, I come against you in the name of the Lord. So in other words, we often see our problems, our situations, and we don't confront them because often we don't know our position.
But I think that's really important. Position is important because I think what tends to happen is, okay, we're sitting here, we're confronted with a problem. So let's say this is the problem. Okay, the problem is here. And then we go to God through the problem.
Yes.
And the word talks about us being seated in heavenly places. It talks about positioning ourselves and our identity. So I think what happens is, when we have a problem, I don't know about you, you're dealing with your problem and it's like it's all over you, and I'm talking about major stuff. I'm talking about Goliath. I'm not talking about I don't know, silly things like you didn't get a parking space in the supermarket. Not that that's silly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So and that when you have those issues and those problems, they're just huge, and that you wake up thinking about them, you go to sleep thinking about them. They're just all over you. And what tends to happen is you go to sleep thinking about them, you wake up thinking, you pray thinking about them. So you pray with them clouding your perspective. You're praying through the problem. People say that's an expression that they say, I'm going to pray through this problem. But I think you're right. What happens is David, so that the army of Israel was standing there facing this giant, but they're facing it as the problem that it is, and they're seeing God on the other side of it. But when David came, he's like, I know who I am. I know who God is. This is nothing. We need to sort it out. And sometimes I think if we can get our perspective and our position in the right place.
Yeah, because remember this, right? And this is what a lot of people don't see. I was actually thinking about this story all morning. David didn't pray. He didn't intercede. He didn't fast. He actually dealt with the problem.
Just went in,
right?
Took it.
Now, let me just jump in. I don't have time to do this morning, but if you go right back to Genesis, when God creates everything, and then he hands it all over to Adam, for Adam to take control of the garden. Right now, we all know what happens in the fall, but in John 17, Jesus changes. He actually reinstates all that. He said, "All authority is given to me. Now I give it to you."
Yeah.
Right. He's given you the authority. We're all waiting for God to bring the change, rather than us in our position and in our full identity in Christ dealing with the problems, because we know who we are in Christ. Paul says in Ephesians, he says, I have given you every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places. Then in Ephesians chapter 4, he says you have the full armor of God. So God has given us everything, literally everything, to confront every situation and every circumstance. I'm not saying you don't pray about it, but prayer and actually activating is very important. And David does something quite remarkable here, right, that I want to bring out, right, is this: as he faces Goliath, the first power, or how would I say, his first weapon is what he says.
That's really good,
Not the gat, not the sling, not the stones. The first thing he says is from his lips. And
actually, that was all that Goliath had used. So he came against him with what Goliath was using. He was taunting people, he says they're taunting.
So if you go into the book of James, it says there's life and death in the tongue. So in other words, God has given us a weapon to empower us to face every battle, every situation, and every circumstance. The problem with all is we lie under our problems, and then we try to pray through the problem.
Rather than standing with God within a place of death. And actually, he is the Word. In the beginning was the Word. So there's power in that, isn't there? When you start to think about it, we have to be careful because time is ticking by. But it's a really good topic. Maybe we'll do some more on it, because I think there's such power in it, isn't it, in overcoming situations.
Well, you see, when you realize who you are, you realize your position. I close with this.
And you realize the weapon that you have.
And you realize the weapon you have, right? It changes your absolute perspective. To everything that you face. Lord gave me a word recently, right, about the situation. He says, time to confront. Rather than leaning into it, bending in it, God has said to me, confront it. Praying about it. God said to me,
none of us like confronting things.
Let's confront the issue, because the issue is not going away. And let me just say this. I'm already full today. Let me say this. If you don't deal with the issue will deal with you.
And it will be an exhausting process. Absolutely. Because, Goliath didn't get tired of coming out every day taunting those people. He taunted and he taunted. Any of us that have dealt with a bully, I've dealt with a good few of them, they never tire of coming at you and at you and at you. So at some point, you just have to brave up and get out there and confront them. But we do it. The beautiful thing is we don't do it alone. Look what he says. I come against you. In the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel. And that's who's on your side this morning. And the other thing I just want to say as we close, I know time is gone, it says, whom you have defied. So he taunted the army, but it was God he defied. So when the enemy comes against us and when the situation's uncertain, remember it's God they are defying and it's God they are coming against. So we are just acting on God's behalf. Again, it comes to that identity.
Absolutely.
So we could go on all day here because this is a good one.
So I'll see you on Thursday and we'll talk again.
We'll see you on Thursday, and we are at the Hilton Hotel Dublin Airport on Sunday at 11. We would love to see you. And watch the space for some big announcements coming out about some more conferences coming up. So take care.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.